Episode 54 of the Monday Morning Worship Leader. Baton or no baton?
Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise Him, all creatures give His glory. Praise Him above the heavenly hosts. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost.
Well, hey guys, Brother John here. So good to be with you on the podcast today. And I want to just say hello to 13 states this month that have downloaded the cast. 13, like the 13 colonies. It's pretty amazing. So hopefully next month we'll see 20 states that have downloaded the podcast each and every week. Well, today we're going to take a look at baton or no baton. That's going to be the question, which some of you that may be a no-brainer, but some of you may not be. So let's take a few minutes and let's just visit that wonderful little stick called the baton. So first of all, my background is that I was classically trained at a university in conducting, and I learned to use the baton. And in fact, when you take basic conducting, you start with the baton, and then you move to the hand work if you so desire to do so. But that being the case, I've taught basic conducting in the university level for about 10 years. Conducting is something that I'm pretty comfortable with, and batons are something that I'm pretty comfortable with. But I started off when I was 20 years old as a worship leader, and at the same time I started as a worship leader, I was also conducting as a conducting student. And so, even then, I started wondering, do I use a baton for directing, say, the choir? So I'm going to basically let you make the decision on your own, but I will tell you what I do. But first of all, if you lead worship in a more contemporary aspect where you simply have a praise band, praise singers, you don't have an ensemble that you lead, then of course conducting with a baton would be senseless. However, if you have a choir behind you, if you have an orchestra, even a handbell ensemble, you have a group like that, maybe a baton is what you use. Now, what do? Well, I will tell you. I use a baton and I don't use a baton. When I use a baton is basically when I direct our orchestra along with our choir solely, like as an anthem or as a prelude or as a call to worship. I also use a baton when I am directing the bell choir at our church. And by the way, I direct a bell choir collegiately as well, and I use a baton all the time for that. One of the reasons is when you're using a baton and you're dealing with instrumental musicians, you're dealing with the importance of exact beat, and that's what a baton can really afford you. But more than that, if you're like me and many church musicians that have a church orchestra, you don't necessarily have the best setup. And if you're like me, you have instruments that are spread all the way across the stage and even beyond. And in that situation, a baton is so very helpful because it catches the eye. That stick really is able to draw the attention to the beat. And so for that, I use a baton. So it's kind of interesting because it also helps our production people. Our production people know that if I pick up a baton, I'm getting ready to direct the orchestra and direct the choir and direct an ensemble. I'm not worship leading. When I worship lead, my baton goes right on my stand, just a quick movement right to the stand, and then I lead worship in the congregation, of course, without a baton. I'll also tell you that I direct if I'm doing an a cappella piece with the choir, more often than not, I don't use a baton there. I use my hands to shape the words and to shape the dynamics and the contour of the piece. I see why most choral conductors do not use batons. It does kind of lend itself well to choral conducting or to instrumental conducting, and hands alone does lend itself well to choral conducting. So what kind of baton do I use? Well, I actually, I had my old baton from school that I bought for years. Had it for years until someone borrowed it and broke it. Thanks, Tim. And then so I started buying my own batons. One of my favorite baton that I have is in our sanctuary, and it stays in the sanctuary at my music stand right there in the sanctuary. And it was actually a bespoke baton made for me by a guy that I used to teach with, and it's Heckman batons. And the heel of the baton, the little handle, the heel, it's made out of polished stone, and the baton has a nice fiberglass weight to it. It's just the perfect baton for me. So that's my favorite. And then I have a whole bunch of others, probably more batons that I need, but I just kind of like having different kinds. I have a rosewood baton that I use for conducting the bells. I just like it for when I conduct bells. I like the weight of it. I like the feel of it. I have several, and these are the El Cheapos of batons, the King David baton. I have a King David baton in every rehearsal room, and then one or two extras in my office. The reason I have so many of them is they do break pretty easily. And so King David batons. Now, King David batons will cost you about $14 to $16. You can get them on Amazon. My Heckman bespoke baton was probably closer to $35 to $40. My rosewood baton about $25. And then a last baton that I have is a lighted baton. I started keeping a lighted baton with a battery charged and ready to go when I used to direct a living Christmas tree. When we would do a performance, that we would bring the lights down and the baton could help guide the performance. But as I've told my students, you don't need a lighted baton until you do. And then there's nothing like it. And I've had a couple of instances in the past 5 or 6 years, just a couple, that a lighted baton has been very, very good to use. And so that's kind of it. I use a baton for when I direct an ensemble or something like that. But that leads me to just a bonus question, a bonus thought. Do I conduct the congregation with a 4/4 pattern like I conduct the choir? And the answer is kind of yes, kind of no. And one of the things I do want to say is if you are a worship leader that uses the guitar or keyboard on stage, some of you have to legitimately do it, and some of you, I know, you're doing something with your hands. I get it. I sympathize. I'm not throwing shade on that one at all. I get it. With my hands, though, I gesture to the congregation. It's not a straight 4/4. They do pick up anacrusis or pick up beats. They do get a downbeat from me, but it's much more for gesturing. So I look at the congregation as my most important and my biggest ensemble, and so I do want to lead them in singing, so I try to be very clear with my beat patterns with them. It's just not very strict, if that makes any sense. And by the way, not only that, it's kind of interesting. On my Wednesday nights, I direct 2 orchestras on Wednesday nights. I start with the Parkway Community Orchestra. We have a dinner break. Then I have my worship orchestra. And then after that, I have choir. And so on my walk from worship orchestra to choir rehearsal, I am telling myself, now you are getting ready to direct choir. You're getting ready to direct choir. You're getting ready to direct choir. I have to look at that in a different way. I have to direct choir differently than I direct my instrumental ensembles. I do use a baton in choir rehearsal because I will use the baton in Sunday morning when they're playing with the orchestra, which happens 90% of the time. So I want them to get used to having a baton in front of them. So, wow. I hope that, I hope that covers most of baton work. It's just one of those things that I struggled with when I first started. Do I use it? Do I not use it? I never thought of using it with the congregation, but do I use it with the choir? And if it were just the choir, I probably would not do that. But, now I have instruments, I do that. So I hope that all this baton stuff you find to be a good word. Today's good word is if you want to know more about conducting. And there are so many great conducting texts out there, but oftentimes they go for one reason or another. Oftentimes because they're scholastic texts, they go on the obsolete pile pretty quick. Not because the info is obsolete, just because a newer book comes out. There's a really good one by Donald Hunsberger, The Art of Conducting, which I have taught from, but is no longer in print. But one that you can usually find pretty easily on Amazon. And this is just a textbook that goes into your library, and it's great for reference. It's called The Modern Conductor by Elizabeth A.H. Green. And Elizabeth Green, she just goes through every aspect of conducting, reading scores and everything like that. It's a great reference book. Mrs. Green was an amazing lady who built up an orchestra in her town from like about 8 kids to a 60 member symphony orchestra. So, I mean, she has a lot to say on the conducting side of things. And so her book, The Modern Conductor, is a really fantastic book, just for good reference. And now it's time for an update. I just wanted to update you on a particular thing that I am getting ready to do. So in episode 19, the title is Should Baptists Use the Apostles' Creed? Now, if you are a liturgical worship leader, you may just be going, what sense does this make that you wouldn't be? But it is part of Baptist culture that we're not necessarily creedal people. But I argue that it would be a good idea. And for my update, I wanted to tell you that this Easter, as a church, we will be speaking the creed together. And this is a pretty big deal. I don't know that we've ever done that in the history of the church. And we're going to do that every once in a while. Not every week, but every once in a while. Our pastor is really behind it. And we just want our people to know the very basics of orthodoxy. So check out that particular episode too. It's episode number 19. Well, I think that's it. I've run out of time, and you've probably run out of patience with me. But I'll tell you this. I am so glad to tell you, and I'm so glad that you agree with me, that we are not rock stars. We are servants. I'll talk to you next week. Next time on the podcast, a rebroadcast, if you will, from a year ago, Calculating Easter. We will spend a few minutes really taking a deep dive in how the East and the West calculate the Easter season.
Next time on the podcast.